The water was not supposed to be inside my house. Not like that. Not moving like it had somewhere to be. The first drop hit my bare foot before I even heard it. Cold. Wrong. I froze halfway down the basement stairs, hands still on the railing, listening harder than breathing. Then came the sound. A deep, hollow gurgle. Not rain. Not a leak. Something moving where it shouldn't. I stepped down one more stair, and the water surged forward like it had been waiting. It slammed against the concrete wall and spilled across the floor, carrying that sour, muddy smell that doesn't belong inside a house. This wasn't groundwater. This was runoff. Directed runoff. My boots weren't on. Didn't matter. I stepped in anyway. The cold shot up my leg. The lights flickered once, then steadied. That flicker told me something else was wrong. Systems don't flicker unless something bigger is happening. I scanned the room. My tools. My workbench. Extension cords trailing across the floor. Everything I built my business on was sitting inches above a rising line of brown water. And it was rising fast. Too fast. I crouched near the drain, expecting it to pull the water down. It didn't. The grate rattled. Then it burped. Push water back up. I felt my jaw tighten. Drains don't reverse like that unless something upstream changes. And when that happens, it's never random. I stood there, ankle deep now, listening harder than thinking. The flow had rhythm. A pulse. Like pressure building somewhere beyond my walls. That's when I noticed the direction. The water wasn't spreading randomly. It was pouring in from one side. The north wall. I moved closer. The concrete was sweating. No, not sweating. Seeping. Thin lines at first. Then thicker streams, pushing through hairline cracks that weren't there last month. I ran my hand along the wall. The surface was cold, vibrating faintly. That shouldn't happen. Concrete doesn't hum. Something behind it was forcing water through. Hard. I stepped back as another surge rolled in. It splashed against my toolbox and rocked it slightly. That toolbox weighs over 100 pounds. I looked at the small window near the ceiling. Rain streaked across the glass, but not enough to explain this. Not even close. This kind of volume comes from redirection. From pipes. From planning. I turned toward the stairs, water sloshing louder now with every step I took. The smell hit harder up there. Wet soil. Asphalt. A hint of oil. Street runoff. My stomach dropped, but not from fear. From recognition. I'd smelled this before on job sites when stormwater systems got rerouted mid-construction. Only difference was, those sites had permits. And barriers. And warning signs. I didn't have any of that. I grabbed a flashlight from the shelf and clicked it on. The beam cut through the dim light, catching the ripples on the surface. The flow was accelerating. That meant pressure was still building somewhere upstream. This wasn't the end of it. This was just the beginning. I climbed 2 steps, then stopped. Something else was off. The sound shifted. Less like water spreading. More like water being forced. A low, steady push. I turned back slowly. The wall wasn't just leaking anymore. It was feeding the room. And it wasn't stopping. I knew then this wasn't an accident. Someone had changed the way water moved through this neighborhood. And somehow, it all pointed here. I just didn't know who yet. But I was about to find out. I shut off the basement lights before the water reached the outlets. Not because it would help, but because I had seen what electricity does when it meets dirty water, and I was not about to learn that lesson twice. The hum in the wall faded the moment the breaker flipped. But the sound of water did not. It kept coming. Steady. Intentional. I stepped outside into the rain without grabbing a jacket. The cold air hit my face, but it did not matter. I needed to see where this was coming from. The street glistened under the streetlights, thin streams running along the curb like veins. Normal at first glance. But then I saw it. The flow was heavier on my side of the street. Too heavy. Water should spread evenly across the gutter. This was being fed from somewhere. I walked along the edge of my yard, boots sinking slightly into the saturated grass. The ground felt soft, recently disturbed. That detail did not belong in a finished neighborhood. I crouched and ran my hand over the soil. Loose, still shifting under pressure. Someone had dug here. Not weeks ago. Recently. My eyes followed the slope of the land, tracing the path water naturally wants to take. Except this water was not following the natural slope. It was cutting across it, redirected, forced into a line that led straight toward my foundation. I stood slowly, rain tapping against my shoulders, and looked uphill toward the row of houses above mine. Their lawns were dry. That was the part that did not make sense. Same storm, same ground, different result. which meant one thing. Their water was not staying there. It was being sent somewhere else. Sent here. A pair of headlights turned the corner and slowed as they passed me. The driver glanced over, then kept going. I knew that look. People notice when something feels off, but they do not stop. Not unless it becomes their problem. I stepped onto the sidewalk and followed the curb uphill. The further I went, the clearer it became. Small channels cut into the grass near the edge of the road. Subtle, clean, deliberate, not erosion. Design. I knelt again near a storm drain and pointed the flashlight inside. The water level was high, almost backing up, but not overflowing. That meant the system was still moving water, just not where it used to. I shifted the beam to the side and caught something metallic under the grate. A new coupling, bright, untouched by rust or debris. That was not part of the original system. Someone had modified this line. Recently, I stood there for a second longer than I should have, letting that sink in. Permits would have been required for this kind of change. Notifications, markings, none of that had happened, which meant either someone cut corners or someone thought they would not get caught. The rain picked up slightly, tapping harder against the pavement. The flow increased. I watched it for a moment, tracking the direction again. Always the same, always toward my house. That kind of consistency does not happen by accident. I turned and looked back down the hill, straight at my place. Even from here, I could see the faint reflection of water pooling near the foundation. My foundation, my basement, my livelihood sitting under a system I did not design and did not approve. I exhaled slowly, rain running down my face, mixing with something sharper in the back of my throat. This was not just a bad night. This was a setup. And setups always leave a trail if you know where to look. I just had to follow it a little further. I did not go back inside right away. I stood there in the rain a little longer, letting the pattern settle in my head. Water always tells the truth if you watch it long enough. And this pattern was too clean, too controlled. I walked further uphill, past the second row of houses, until the curb curved slightly near a landscaped median. That was where the system split. I could feel it before I saw it. The ground under my boots changed. Firmer on one side, hollow on the other. I tapped the pavement lightly with my heel. One side echoed back. That hollow sound should not be there. Not on a finished street. I crouched and brushed aside a thin layer of mulch near the curb. There it was. A fresh cut line where concrete had been patched. Not perfectly, just enough to pass a quick glance. But not enough to fool someone who has poured and cut slab for 15 years. I ran my fingers along the seam. Still rough, still new. Someone opened this up and closed it fast. That kind of work happens when you do not want attention. I angled my flashlight lower and caught the edge of a pipe just beneath the surface. Larger than the standard residential line. Maybe 8 inches. Maybe more. That is not something you reroute without a reason. Or without authority. I followed the direction with my eyes. It pointed downhill. Toward me. I leaned back on my heels and let out a slow breath. This was not random runoff. This was a redirected main feed. I stood and turned slightly, scanning the houses around me. Most of them sat higher than mine. Cleaner lawns. Better grading. Less pooling near their foundations. It clicked into place piece by piece. Someone solved their drainage problem by moving it. Not fixing it. Just moving it. And they chose the lowest point on the block. My property. I straightened up and wiped the rain from my face, though it came right back. There is always paperwork for something like this. Always a trail. Permits. Contractors. Inspection logs. Unless someone skipped steps. Or pushed it through quietly. I started walking again, slower this time, eyes scanning every detail. The slope of each yard. The angle of each downspout. Little things most people never notice. But they add up. They always do. Halfway up the block, I stopped again. One house stood out. Not because it looked different. Because it looked too perfect. The lawn sloped cleanly away from the foundation. No standing water. No runoff marks. The edges were sharp, recently cut. And near the curb, I saw another patch. Cleaner than the first one. Better hidden. But still there. I stepped closer and angled the flashlight. Same seam. Same fresh work. Connected line. This was the source. Or close to it. I glanced up at the house. Lights off. Curtains drawn. Everything quiet. Too quiet for a night like this. I could hear the rain hitting the roof, but none of it was spilling over the edges. That meant the water had somewhere else to go. Somewhere underground. Somewhere that did not involve their basement. I felt a small shift in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just clarity. Because once you see the system, you cannot unsee it. And once you understand it, you can change it. I took one last look at the patched line, then turned back downhill. The water kept moving, exactly where it had been told to go. But systems like this only work one way, until someone decides they do not. And I was already thinking about how to make it stop. I stepped back into my basement, and the smell hit harder this time. Wet concrete, dirt, something metallic in the air. The water had climbed another inch while I was outside. It was not slowing down. I moved fast now, pulled extension cords up onto the workbench, lifted tool cases onto higher shelves. Each movement felt measured, automatic, like I had done this before. Except I had not. Not like this. I paused near the wall again and pressed my palm against it. The vibration was stronger now, steadier, like a machine running behind it. That meant the flow upstream was still feeding it, still pushing. I turned and looked across the basement. The reflection of the overhead light shimmered across the water surface, bending around every object it touched. It looked calm, but it was not. The surface was moving in one direction, always toward the drain that no longer worked. That detail stayed with me. Drains do not fail all at once. They get overwhelmed, which means something upstream is forcing more volume than the system was designed for. I grabbed a tape measure from the shelf and crouched again near the seep line. Measured the height of the water against the wall. 2 inches. Then I checked the clock on my phone. Waited 30 seconds. Measured again. 2.5. That rate was not normal runoff. That was pressurized input. I stood up slowly, doing the math in my head. If it kept rising like this, I had maybe an hour before it reached the outlets I could not move. Maybe less if the storm picked up. I glanced toward the breaker panel at the top of the stairs. Already off. Good. One less variable. But the rest of this was not something I could shut down from inside. I needed to see the full system. I headed upstairs, grabbed a dry towel, and wiped my hands quickly. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification. Neighborhood group chat. I opened it without thinking. A message from someone 2 houses uphill. Glad the drainage upgrade is finally working. No more pooling in our yards. I stared at the screen for a second longer than I should have. Then another message popped up. Yeah, HOA finally got something right. I exhaled slowly. There it was. Not hidden. Not even subtle. They knew something changed. They just did not know where it went. Or maybe they did not care. I scrolled up. A photo from earlier that week. Fresh trench lines. Workers in vests. Equipment parked along the curb. No notice had ever reached me. No letter. No knock on the door. Just work done quietly uphill while I was at a job site. That was how you avoid questions. I locked my phone and slipped it back into my pocket. The rain outside picked up again, heavier now, tapping against the windows in a steady rhythm. I could hear the difference. The flow would increase again. That meant more pressure, more water, more damage. I stepped back outside and looked downhill toward my house. The yard was already starting to pool near the foundation. The same path, the same direction, everything feeding one point. My point. I walked along the side of the house, following the line where water met the wall. It was not just coming through the cracks. It was being delivered to them, directed with purpose. I crouched near the base and brushed away a layer of wet dirt. The soil shifted easily, too easily. Then I saw it, a faint outline just beneath the surface. A pipeline, larger than anything that should connect to a residential foundation. My hand hovered over it for a second. That was the final piece. Not just redirected, connected. Someone had tied their system directly into mine. I stood up slowly, rain soaking through my shirt now, but I did not feel it anymore. Because once you understand the connection, you understand the leverage. And I was starting to see exactly where to apply it. I did not touch the pipe right away. I stood there in the rain, staring at that faint outline under the dirt, letting the full picture settle into place. Because this was not sloppy work. It was calculated. Someone knew exactly where my foundation sat, exactly where the lowest pressure point would be. And they tied their system into it like it was part of the plan. I stepped back and wiped my hands on my jeans, mud streaking across the fabric. My mind was already running ahead. Pipe diameter, flow rate, entry angle. If they connected an 8-inch line into my side, that meant upstream volume was far beyond what my basement drain could ever handle, which explained everything I had just seen. I walked a few feet along the wall and knelt again, tracing the line. The soil was still loose in a narrow strip, like it had been opened and closed in a single pass. No settling, No compaction. Fast work. Quiet work. That kind of job does not get done without someone signing off. Or someone looking the other way. I stood and looked uphill again. The rain blurred the houses into soft shapes, but I could still see the clean edges of their lawns. No pooling. No overflow. They had solved their problem. Completely. I turned and headed back inside. The basement air felt heavier now. Thicker. The water had climbed past my boots while I was gone. It swirled around the legs of my workbench, carrying small debris in slow circles. I stepped carefully, listening to the way it moved. Still feeding from the same wall. Still pushing. I grabbed a marker from the shelf and drew a line on the concrete just above the water level. Then I stepped back and watched. 30 seconds. 40. The water crept past the mark. Slow. Steady. No hesitation. That confirmed it. Continuous pressure. Not just surface runoff. I turned toward the drain again and crouched low. The grate rattled under the flow. Not pulling. Just reacting. That meant the downstream line was already maxed out, which meant every gallon coming in had nowhere to go but up. I stood up and ran a hand through my hair, water dripping from my sleeve onto the floor. This was not something I could fix with a pump. Not tonight. Not with this volume. I needed to stop the source. Or redirect it. I walked over to my tool rack and grabbed a small inspection mirror and a flashlight. Back at the wall, I angled the mirror down into one of the wider cracks. The beam caught the inside edge of the pipe connection. Clean cut. Fresh sealant. No corrosion. Recently installed. Very recently. I pulled the mirror back slowly, feeling that same shift in my chest again. Not panic. Not anger. Something colder. More precise. Because now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Not a leak. Not a failure. A system. And systems can be controlled if you understand where to interrupt them. I straightened up and looked around the basement one more time. My equipment. My space. My livelihood sitting in water someone else decided I could handle. That part mattered. But not as much as the design behind it. Because whoever built this assumed one thing. That I would react. That I would try to defend from inside. Pumps. Sandbags. Calls to insurance. All of it reactive. All of it too late. I glanced back at the wall. The water pushed through again, stronger this time, as if the system had adjusted to resistance. That was the mistake. Systems like this only work when the pressure flows one way. They are not built for pushback. I wiped my hands again and headed toward the stairs, already mapping out the lines in my head. Pipe length. Elevation change. Access points. There was always a weak spot. Always a place where control shifted. And I was getting very close to finding it. I did not rush. That was the first decision I made. Because rushing is how people make mistakes when pressure is high, and pressure was exactly what this system depended on. I stepped back into the rain again and walked uphill, slower this time, replaying everything I had seen. The patch lines, the slope, the connection into my foundation. It all pointed to one thing. There was a main feed somewhere above, and everything else branched from it. Find that, and you control everything downstream. I kept moving until I reached the median again. The hollow sound under the pavement stayed in my head. I stepped off the curb and onto the grass, then crouched low, pressing my palm flat against the ground. I could feel it now. A faint vibration. Not loud, not obvious, but steady. Water under pressure moving through a confined space. That was the spine of the system. I shifted a few inches to the left. The vibration faded. Back to the right. Stronger again. There it was. I stood and looked around. No one outside. No movement in the windows. Just rain and streetlight. I stepped back onto the curb and traced the line mentally. From this point, it split. One direction toward the houses uphill. The other toward me. That meant there had to be a junction. A control point. Somewhere they tied new lines into the old system. I walked along the curb, counting steps, watching for any imperfection. Then I saw it. A metal access cover, half hidden under a thin layer of runoff and leaves. Not new, but recently disturbed. The edges were cleaner than they should have been. I crouched and brushed away the debris. The bolts were not rusted. They were recently turned. That was enough. I sat back on my heels for a second, letting the rain hit my shoulders, and pictured the layout beneath my feet. Main line, junction, feed split. One branch relieved their yards. The other overloaded mine. Simple, efficient, quiet. I reached out and tapped the cover lightly. Solid, but the sound underneath carried differently. Hollow space. That was where the pressure shifted. That was where everything could be changed. I stood slowly and looked back downhill. Even in the rain, I could see the darker patch around my foundation. The system was still feeding it, still working exactly as designed, which meant I had time. Not much, but enough. I turned and headed back toward my house, boots splashing through shallow water along the curb. My mind was already moving through the steps. Volume, material, timing. You do not stop a system like this by blocking it randomly. You stop it at the right place, at the right moment, with enough force to make the entire system react. I stepped into my garage and flipped on the light. The concrete floor was dry. For now, I moved quickly, scanning the shelves. Bags of quick-set concrete stacked along the back wall, left over from a foundation repair job last month. 50-pound bags. I counted without thinking. 1, 2, 3, 10. More than enough. I grabbed one and dropped it onto the workbench. The weight hit with a solid thud. Then another, and another. The plan was already forming. Not complicated, just precise. I glanced toward the door, listening to the rain intensify again. The timing would have to be perfect. Too early, and it would not hold. Too late, and the damage inside would be worse. I tightened my grip on the edge of the bench and exhaled slowly. Because once I did this, there would be no undoing it. The system would respond exactly the way it was built to, just not in the direction they expected. I picked up the first bag and headed back out into the rain. I knew exactly where I needed to go next. I set the first bag down beside the metal cover and wiped the rain from my eyes with the back of my hand. The streetlight flickered once, then held steady, casting a pale glow over the wet pavement. Everything looked normal from a distance. Quiet neighborhood, late storm, no one watching. That part mattered. I crouched and ran my fingers along the edge of the cover again, confirming what I already knew. This was the junction, the point where everything split, the point where pressure decided direction. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small wrench, then started on the bolts. They turned easier than they should have. Recently opened, recently closed. That detail stayed with me. Someone had been here not long ago. The last bolt came loose, and I set it aside carefully, not letting it roll. Small sounds travel far at night. I lifted the cover just enough to shift it, then slid it to the side. The smell hit immediately. Wet earth, stale water, a deep, confined space carrying more volume than it was built for. I angled my flashlight down into the opening. The beam caught the main pipe first. Wide, fast, water rushing through with a steady force that echoed up the shaft. Then the branch lines. One feeding uphill, one feeding down. Mine. The flow into my branch was aggressive, stronger than it needed to be. That confirmed it. They had adjusted the angle, increased the feed, not just redirecting, amplifying. I sat back for a second, rain dripping from my chin, and watched the pattern. Timing mattered now. Too early, and the system would absorb it. Too late, and my basement would take more damage. I needed peak flow. I needed pressure at its highest point. I reached for the first bag of concrete and tore it open along the seam. The powder inside stayed dry for now, protected by the outer layer. I grabbed a small bucket from my side and dipped it into the runoff along the curb. The water was cold, dirty, perfect. I poured it into the bag and started mixing with my hand, feeling the texture change as it thickened. This was not about finesse. This was about mass and timing. I worked fast, kneading the mixture until it reached a heavy, dense consistency. Not too wet, not too dry, just enough to move once, then stop forever. I leaned over the opening again and watched the flow. Still building, still feeding. The rain had picked up. I could hear it now hitting harder against the street, feeding the system above me. Good. I needed that. I grabbed the first load and lowered it carefully into the branch line leading to my house. The water hit it immediately, pushing against it, trying to carry it forward. I held it in place for a second, letting the pressure settle around it. Then I released. It shifted slightly, then lodged. Not enough. I reached for the second bag, mixed faster this time, heavier, dropped it in right behind the first. The flow reacted instantly. A deeper sound, a change in pitch, pressure building where it had not been before. That was the response I was waiting for. I did not stop. Third bag, fourth, each one stacking into the line, narrowing the path, forcing the water to compress. The system was starting to push back now. The flow surged, trying to break through, but the mass held. That was the point. Not to block it completely. Not yet. Just enough to make the system feel it. I leaned back and watched the water level inside the pipe rise slightly. That meant the pressure was redirecting, looking for the next available path. I placed one more load, slower this time, sealing the gap. The sound changed again. Less rush, more resistance. The system was no longer in control of the direction. I stood up slowly, hands coated in wet concrete, rain washing some of it away. The rest stayed. Heavy, real. Because once pressure builds in a closed system, it does not disappear. It moves. And I knew exactly where it was about to go. I did not close the cover right away. I left it open just enough to watch the reaction. The water inside the pipe changed its behavior within seconds. The steady rush turned uneven, surging, pausing, then surging again. That is what happens when pressure hits resistance it was not designed for. I leaned closer, listening. The sound deepened. Not louder, heavier, like the system was pushing against itself. I stepped back slowly and wiped my hands against the rain, watching the opening as if it might move. For a moment, nothing else changed. The flow kept fighting the blockage, trying to force its way through. That was expected. Systems do not give up immediately. They adapt. They search for the next available path. I stood there long enough to feel the shift before I saw it. The vibration under my boots changed direction. Subtle, but clear. I turned my head uphill. Something up there had started to take the pressure back. I picked up the flashlight and aimed it down the line again. The water level inside the main pipe had risen slightly. Not flooding, just enough to redistribute force. That meant the branch toward my house was no longer the easiest path. Exactly what I needed. I slid the metal cover back into place, leaving the bolts loose for now. No need to lock it down yet. Not until I saw the full effect. I grabbed the empty bags and stepped away from the curb, moving back toward my house at a steady pace. The rain had intensified. The street now carried more runoff, feeding the system harder than before. Perfect timing. I reached my yard and stopped near the foundation, watching the same spot where the water had been pooling earlier. It was still there, but something felt different. The movement was slower, less aggressive. I crouched and touched the surface. The flow had weakened, not stopped, but reduced. That meant the blockage was holding. For now, I stood up and looked uphill again. That was when I saw it. A faint shimmer of water near the curb in front of one of the higher houses. Not there before, just a thin line at first. Then another. They were small, easy to miss if you were not looking for them. But I was. The system was shifting. The water was searching for release. I walked a few steps up the sidewalk, keeping my eyes on the curb line. The small streams grew thicker as I moved. Water began to gather where the ground had been dry earlier. That perfect slope I had noticed before was no longer holding. The soil could only take so much before it gave way. I stopped and listened. A new sound joined the rain. A low trickling, then a soft overflow. Not loud, but out of place. I angled the flashlight toward one of the storm grates uphill. The water there was higher now, closer to the edge. The system was reaching capacity. I straightened up slowly, feeling the shift settle fully into place. They had built a one-way solution. Efficient, clean, until something interrupted the flow. Now the pressure had nowhere to go but back through the system they trusted. I turned back toward my house one more time. The pooling near my foundation had stopped growing. It held steady. That was enough for tonight. The rest of the system was still adjusting, still redistributing. I could hear it in the ground, in the pipes, in the way the rain sounded different now that it had somewhere else to go. I took a step back from the curb and let the moment sit. Because once a system flips direction under pressure, it does not reset quietly. It reveals everything it was hiding. And I was about to see exactly how far that went. The rain did not let up, but the street changed anyway. I stood there watching it happen in real time. The water no longer rushed past my yard like it owned the place. It hesitated, split, looked for somewhere else to go. That was the first sign. Then came the second. A porch light flicked on uphill. Then another. People notice when something they rely on stops behaving the way it should. I started walking slowly in that direction, keeping to the edge of the sidewalk. The curb that had been clean earlier now carried thin streams spilling over onto the grass. Not much, just enough to tell a different story. I stopped near the same house I had marked before. The perfect lawn was no longer perfect. Water pooled near the edge, darkening the soil, softening the line they had worked so hard to keep sharp. I crouched and pressed my hand into the ground. It gave slightly. Saturation was starting. That was fast. Faster than most people expect. Systems like this hide the problem until they cannot anymore. Then everything shows up at once. I stood and looked toward the storm grate nearby. The water there had reached the lip, not overflowing yet, but close, very close. I could hear the change now. The soft trickle had turned into a steady spill. Not loud, but persistent. The kind of sound that does not belong in a place that was dry an hour ago. A door opened behind me. I did not turn right away. Footsteps approached, cautious, uncertain. Hey, is something wrong with the drainage? The voice carried that edge of confusion people get when their expectations break. I glanced back briefly. Middle-aged, barefoot on a porch, looking at the curb like it had betrayed him. I nodded once. Something changed. That was all I said, because explanations were not needed yet. The system was already explaining itself. I turned back toward the street and watched the water push against the grate. It surged, then pulled back, then surged again. The pressure inside was still adjusting, still finding balance. I could feel it under my feet. The same vibration as before, but different now. Not directed, distributed. I stepped away from the curb and looked further uphill. More lights coming on, more doors opening, small signs, questions starting to form before answers arrive. That is how it always begins. Not with a flood, with confusion. I walked back down toward my house, slower now, letting the sounds settle behind me. The rain softened slightly, but the ground did not recover. It held the water where it had not before. That was the shift, permanent enough to matter, temporary enough to deny at first. I stepped into my yard and paused near the foundation. The pooling had not grown. It had stabilized. The wall still damp, still marked, but no longer feeding. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight in my chest ease just a fraction. Not relief, just confirmation. The system had flipped. I turned and looked uphill one last time. The street that had sent everything my way was now dealing with its own design. Quietly, gradually, exactly how it had been built to work. I wiped the remaining concrete from my hands and let the rain take the rest. Because in the end, I did not change the system. I just gave it back its choices. And it chose exactly where the pressure belonged.